We got married yesterday. The words landed like a sniper shot, precise and devastating. My new daughter-in-law, Ava, smiled, the overhead light catching the massive diamond on her finger. My son Julian just stared at his plate, a hostage in his own life. They thought they had executed the perfect ambush. They thought the old man was finished, but they were about to learn a very expensive lesson. You don't corner a man who spent his life building empires from dust. If you're listening to this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. Let me back up and tell you how a simple family dinner turned into a declaration of war. My name is Arthur Vance. I'm an engineer. I build things. Bridges that span rivers. Skyscrapers that touch the clouds. Structures meant to withstand pressure. Built on solid foundations. I thought my family was built the same way. Solid. Unbreakable. My wife Eleanor passed 5 years ago. Cancer took her too soon. That left me and Julian. My son. My only child. My legacy. I thought we were strong enough to survive anything. I was wrong. We lived in a large stone house outside Boston. Quiet streets. Old money. The kind of neighborhood where scandals are whispered behind manicured hedges. It was a comfortable life. A life I worked 40 years to secure. Julian was 26. He was smart, but soft. He lacked the fire, the grit that drove me. He drifted between jobs, never quite finding his footing. I supported him. I wanted him to be happy. I wanted him to find his purpose. I thought he was trying. I was blind. Then he met Ava. 6 months ago. It happened at a charity gala. She was stunning, polished, ambitious, with eyes that seemed to calculate the value of everything they saw. She worked in private equity, vague, dangerous. Julian was instantly smitten. He was blinded by her charm. He saw perfection. I saw something else, a coldness beneath the surface, a hunger that unsettled me. She had a habit, a tell. When she was nervous or lying, she'd tap her manicured nails against the nearest hard surface. Tap, tap, tap. A subtle warning signal I chose to ignore. I wanted to believe this was love. I wanted to believe she was the one who would finally help him grow up. But that wasn't the plan. Not their plan, anyway. They announced their engagement 3 months later. Fast. Too fast. I tried to voice my concerns. We were sitting in my study, the scent of old leather and bourbon hanging in the air. She seems very driven, Julian, I said carefully, swirling the ice in my glass. She believes in me, Dad, he replied, defensive. He stood by the fireplace, fidgeting with his cuffs. He always did that when he was anxious. You should try it. The words stung. A low blow. I backed off. I didn't want to push him away. I didn't want to be the obstacle to his happiness. So I agreed to pay for the wedding. A big, lavish affair. The kind Eleanor would have wanted for her boy. I opened my wallet. I opened my heart. I opened the door to the wolf. Planning with Ava was a nightmare. A calculated exercise in frustration. Venues were booked and canceled. Guest lists changed daily. The costs were exploding, yet nothing was finalized. I kept asking for a date. I needed something concrete. We're waiting for the perfect moment, Arthur, Ava would say with a dismissive wave of her hand. Her smile never quite reached her eyes. She was stalling. But why? I knew something was wrong. Julian started looking tired, stressed. He stopped coming to our weekly lunches. He stopped answering my calls. He was slipping away, fading like an old photograph. And I didn't know why. The silence from him was the worst part. The unanswered questions. The growing distance. I felt a sense of dread creeping into my bones. It all came to a head on a cool October evening. I invited them for dinner. I needed answers. I needed a date. The house felt too quiet, too empty. The silence before the storm. They arrived late. 45 minutes late. Julian looked distracted, his eyes darting around the room. Ava walked in like a conquering queen, wearing a striking white dress. It felt intentional, aggressive. A declaration of ownership. We sat down in the dining room. The good china, the expensive wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. I wanted to remind Julian of the life I'd built for him, the legacy he was meant to inherit. The conversation was strained, forced smiles, short answers. The clinking of silverware against porcelain echoed in the quiet room. I carved the roast. I poured the wine. I waited. Finally, I put my knife down. The sound was louder than I intended. All right, I said, looking directly at Julian. My voice was calm, steady. The invitations need to go out. The caterers need a final commitment. When is the wedding? Julian flinched. He stared down at his plate, pushing a potato around with his fork. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The silence stretched, taut and uncomfortable. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Tick-tock, tick-tock. I looked at Ava. She was watching me, a small, triumphant smirk playing on her lips. Her nails tapped softly on the edge of the wine glass. Tap, tap, tap. The warning signal was sounding, loud and clear. "Oh, Arthur," she said, her voice drooping with fake sympathy. She paused, letting the words hang in the air, savoring the moment. "There's no need to worry about invitations." Then she delivered the blow, sharp and precise. "We got married yesterday." The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white. "Married? Yesterday? Without me?" The air left my lungs. My ears rang. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. I looked at Julian, my son, my own flesh and blood. He just sat there, silent, complicit, a hostage in his own life. Yesterday, my voice was a strangled whisper. I barely recognized it as my own. "You got married and you didn't tell me?" Julian finally looked up. His eyes were filled with a mixture of guilt and defiance. "It was spontaneous, Dad. We were at the courthouse. It just felt right." "Right?" The word tasted like ash in my mouth. "Right to exclude your own father, the man who raised you, the man who gave you everything?" I was shaking now, the rage building inside me like a pressure cooker. "We wanted something intimate," Ava interjected smoothly, placing her hand over Julian's. "A gesture of possession. Just us. No drama. No expectations. No drama." She meant me. I was the drama. The obstacle. The inconvenience. I looked at the white dress, the massive diamond on her finger. This wasn't spontaneous. This was calculated. This was the first move in a very dangerous game. And I just realized I was the target. I pushed my chair back. The sounds scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. "I need some air." I walked out onto the terrace. The cold night air hit my face, sharp and bracing. I stared out at the manicured lawn, the oak trees Eleanor had planted. Everything looked the same, but everything had changed. I knew, deep down, this was just the beginning. The real betrayal was still waiting in the shadows. The next few weeks were a masterclass in polite aggression, a slow, methodical takeover of my... It started with a suggestion, disguised as concern. "Arthur, this house is so massive," Ava said one morning over coffee. She was already dressed in an expensive suit. Julian was still in his bathrobe, looking lost. "It must be exhausting to maintain all by yourself." "I manage," I said shortly, folding the newspaper. "We were thinking," she continued, tapping her nails on the granite countertop. Tap, tap. "Julian and I should move in, temporarily, until we find the perfect place." Julian chimed in too quickly, rehearsed. "It makes sense, Dad. We can help out. Keep you company. Keep me company. Or keep an eye on me. Monitor my movements. Control my environment." I hesitated. I wanted my son close. I wanted to believe that this was a reconciliation, an attempt to mend the fractured relationship. I wanted to believe the best in him. That was my biggest mistake. I agreed. They moved in the following weekend. It wasn't a temporary arrangement. It was an invasion, an occupation. Moving trucks blocked the driveway for hours. Boxes filled the hallway, mountains of cardboard erasing the familiar landscape of my home. Adu directed the movers like a general commanding an army, pointing, ordering, criticizing. She wasted no time making her mark, erasing my history. It started small, rearranging the furniture in the living room, shifting the balance of power. I came home one afternoon to find my favorite armchair, the worn leather one I'd had for 20 years, gone. It was the chair where I read to Julian when he was a boy. The chair where I sat with Eleanor, night after night, replaced by a sleek, modern monstrosity that looked like it belonged in a museum, not a home. I stopped in the doorway, The empty space where my chair used to be felt like a physical blow. The room felt sterile, cold, alien. "Where's my chair?" I demanded. My voice echoed in the suddenly empty room. Ava looked up from her laptop, feigning surprise. "Oh, that old thing? I donated it." "Donated it? Without asking me?" "It was so dreary, Arthur," she said with a dismissive shrug. "It didn't fit the new aesthetic. We need light. We need space." Dreary. She called my comfort dreary, my memories dreary. The insult was intentional. A calculated move to assert her dominance, to show me I had no power here. Julian stood by, silent, a spectator in the dismantling of his own past. He watched her erase me, piece by piece. And he did nothing. He just fidgeted with his cuffs, avoiding my gaze. I swallowed hard. The rage burned in my chest. But I held it in. For now, I retreated to my study. My sanctuary, the one room she hadn't touched yet. I locked the door. I needed control over something, even if it was just one room. But the invasion wasn't just physical. It was financial. The encroachment had become a siege. Packages started arriving daily, mountains of them. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, art I knew they couldn't afford. Things that screamed new money. I checked the joint credit card I had given Julian years ago for emergencies, for when he needed help. It was maxed out, $20,000 gone in 2 weeks. I confronted Julian. I found him by the pool, scrolling through his phone, oblivious to the storm brewing around him. I held up the credit card statement. My hand was shaking with rage. The afternoon sun felt too hot. The water in the pool was perfectly still, a mirror reflecting the cloudless sky. Julian, $20,000. Explain this. He didn't even look up. We needed some things, Dad. Furniture. Clothes for Ava's work events. His voice was flat, monotone. This isn't furniture. This is $8,000 at Saks. This is reckless. He finally looked at me, his eyes cold, defiant. We're married now. We have a certain image to maintain. An image? My money. Your image, is that how it works now? It's family money, Dad, he snapped, standing up. He was suddenly taller than I remembered. You always said, what's yours is mine. Ava says I need to start acting like it. He walked away, leaving me alone by the pool. Ava says, the words echoed in my mind. She was poisoning him against me, turning my generosity into a weapon, twisting my love into an obligation. I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. They weren't just living here, they were taking over. And I was letting them. The isolation tactic started next, subtle but effective. A slow, methodical cutting of ties. My longtime housekeeper, Maria, quit. She had been with us for 15 years. She was family. She was crying when she told me, her hands trembling. Mr. Vance. I can't work here anymore, she whispered, looking over her shoulder, as if afraid of being overheard. This is Ava. She is very difficult. She criticizes everything. She accused me of stealing. Stealing? Maria, who wouldn't take a penny that wasn't hers. The cruelty was staggering. Ava replaced her with a new cleaning service. Cold, efficient women who barely spoke English. They reported directly to Ava. They moved through the house like ghosts, silent and watchful. My home didn't feel like my own anymore. It felt like a prison, and I was the only inmate. Then my business associates started calling me, concerned, confused. My CFO, Robert Chen, called me late one evening. Robert was a meticulous man, precise in his words and actions. He sounded rattled. Arthur, I had a strange conversation with your daughter-in-law. Ava, what did she want? She was asking about the company's liquidity, the offshore accounts, the contingency plans. She has no authority to ask those questions. Robert, I said, my grip tightening on the phone. She is not involved in the business. I know, but she said she was representing Julian's interests, that you were considering retirement, that you wanted them to take a more active role. Retirement. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. They were laying the groundwork, planting the seeds of doubt, painting me as old, tired, incapable, They were orchestrating a coup. I realized I needed to protect myself. I needed to secure my assets. I needed to stop the bleeding before it was too late. I went to my study. I locked the door. The silence was a relief. I opened the wall safe behind the painting of Eleanor. The combination was her birthday, something I never changed. It was empty. My heart hammered against my ribs. Panic set in. Cold, paralyzing panic. The deeds to the house, the company and corporation papers, my will, the bearer bonds, 40 years of work, everything, gone. I tore the study apart, desperate, frantic. They were nowhere. I knew exactly who took them, and I knew exactly how they did it. Julian, my own son, had robbed me. I stormed out of the study. I found Ava in the kitchen, calmly making a smoothie. The whirring of the blender grated on my nerves. "Where are they?" I demanded, my voice shaking with rage. She looked up, her eyes wide with false innocence. A masterful performance. "Where is what, Arthur?" "My documents. My files. From the safe." "Don't play games with me." "Oh, those old things," she said casually, taking a sip of her green smoothie. "Julian and I took them to the lawyer. We needed to update them, to secure the family assets." "Update them? Without asking me? How did you open the safe?" "Julian knows the combination, Arthur," she said sweetly, the smile returning to her lips. "He is your son, after all. He has a right to access his inheritance. We're family now, Arthur," she continued, her voice hardening. The mask was slipping. "And as Julian's wife, I have a right to protect our future. Our future, not mine. Theirs. They were stealing my life's work right in front of my eyes. And they were using my love for my son as the key. I felt utterly helpless, defeated. They had the documents. They had the leverage. And I had nothing. I thought I had reached rock bottom. I was wrong. The fall had just begun. The next morning, I drove to my company headquarters. The Vance Engineering Building. My name etched in the marble lobby. My fortress. I walked into the lobby. The receptionist, Emily, looked nervous. "Mr. Vance, I'm not sure if you should be here." "What are you talking about, Emily?" I snapped. "I own this building." I walked towards the elevators. The security guard, Mark, blocked my path. "I'm sorry, Mr. Vance," he said, his face flushed with embarrassment. "I have orders. You are not allowed on the premises." "Orders? Whose orders?" The audacity was breathtaking. I pushed past him. I didn't care about the consequences. I took the elevator to the executive floor. I needed answers. I needed to stop this madness. I walked towards my office, the corner office. The door was closed. I could hear voices inside, laughter. I opened the door. The scene hit me like a physical blow. Julian and Ava were standing there, with Robert Chen, my CFO, and a man I didn't recognize. Tall, slick suit, shark-like smile, Jake Sullivan, a notorious corporate lawyer, and Julian was sitting in my chair, behind my desk. The room fell silent. The laughter died. Everyone stared at me. Julian looked startled, then quickly masked it with cold defiance. Ava just smirked. Robert Chen looked deeply uncomfortable. He kept fiddling with his tie, his eyes darting towards the exit. The air in the room was thick with betrayal. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Julian asked, standing up slowly. He tried to sound authoritative, but his voice trembled. "I work here," I said, my voice dangerously calm. The rage was simmering beneath the surface, cold and controlled. "This is my office. This is my company." Ava stepped forward. Her eyes were cold, hard, devoid of any emotion. "Actually, Arthur, it's not. Not anymore." Jake Sullivan stepped forward. He handed me a thick document. "Mr. Vance, I am Julian's legal counsel." I looked at the document. My hands were shaking. The words blurred in front of my eyes. "This is a restraining order," Sullivan said, his voice smug, "and a notice of termination. The board convened an emergency meeting this morning. Julian is the new CEO, effective immediately." "CEO? Julian? The boy who couldn't hold down a job for more than 6 months?" It was absurd. The board? I looked at Robert, my friend, my colleague for 20 years. How could you let this happen, Robert? Robert looked away. His shame was palpable. They had the incorporation papers, Arthur. They presented evidence that you were unwell, that your decisions were erratic, that you were jeopardizing the company's future. They had the votes. Unlaw. Erratic. They had weaponized my grief, my isolation. They were painting me as incompetent, senile. I looked at Julian, my son. He stood there, basking in his victory. With stolen victory. My life's work gone. My ears rang. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. The weight of the betrayal crushed me. I looked around the office, the awards on the walls, the photos of Eleanor and Julian on the desk. 40 years of my life, erased in a single morning. I walked out. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. My silence was a promise of war. I sat in my car in the parking lot, the restraining order on the passenger seat, a piece of paper that summarized my defeat. I felt numb, empty, hollowed out. I thought about giving up, letting them have it all. I was tired, old. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was finished. The thought lasted only a moment. Then I thought about Ava, her smirk, her cold eyes, her calculated destruction of my family. No, I wouldn't let her win. I wouldn't let her destroy everything I built. I was an engineer. I built things, and now I was going to dismantle her conspiracy. Piece by piece. I needed help. I needed allies. I called my lawyer, Richard Sterling. An old friend, a shark in a tailored suit. Ruthless, loyal, Richard. They did it, I said, my voice tight. They took the company. Richard cursed under his breath. I was afraid of this. They moved fast. They are trying to liquidate the assets, to drain the accounts before we can stop them. How can they do that? I'm the majority shareholder. They forged the documents, Arthur, Richard said, his voice grim. They transferred the shares to Julian. It's fraud, but proving it will take time. And money. And time was something I didn't have. We need to hit them where it hurts, Richard said. The money, your personal investments. The hidden accounts. The ones they don't know about. We need to freeze them. Now. I spent the next few hours on the phone. Moving money, closing accounts, locking everything down. A frantic race against time. I felt a glimmer of hope. I was finally taking action. I was fighting back. But I needed more. I needed information. I needed leverage. I needed to know who Ava really was. Richard recommended a private investigator, Sarah Jenkins, former detective, sharp, cynical, and relentless. I met her in a diner. She ordered black coffee. She listened quietly, taking notes in a small notebook, her eyes missing nothing. Gold diggers like Ava always have a pattern, she said, her voice gravelly. They leave a trail of destruction. We just need to find it. I don't care about the cost, I said. I care about my legacy. I care about my son. Sarah nodded. All right, Arthur. I'm on it. A week passed. A week of silence from Julian. A week of mounting pressure from Ava's lawyers. They were trying to force the sale of the house. They wanted to erase every trace of me. Then Sarah called me. Her voice was tense, urgent. Arthur, I found something, and it's big. We met at her office. Small, cluttered, smelled like stale smoke and burnt coffee. Sarah handed me a thick file. Ava Monroe doesn't exist. Her real name is Clara Vance, from a small town in Ohio. No college degree, no private equity background. Just a string of frauds, embezzlements, and identity thefts. A con artist, a professional predator. My blood ran cold. I opened the file. Mugshots. Police reports. Restraining orders. A trail of destruction spanning a decade. She targets wealthy families, Sarah continued. She marries the son, isolates him from the parents, and then drains the assets. She's ruthless. I felt sick, nauseous. My son was married to a monster I had invited into my home. But Julian, I started, my voice trembling. He's not stupid. How could he fall for this? He didn't just fall for it, Sarah said. handing me another file. He was desperate. I opened it. Bank statements. Loan agreements. Gambling debts. Julian was in massive debt. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. He started gambling 2 years ago, Sarah explained. It escalated. He borrowed money from some very dangerous people. I stared at the numbers. The amounts were staggering. How could I have missed this? How could I have missed this? How could I have been so oblivious to my own son's struggle? He was ashamed, Sarah said gently. He didn't want you to know. He didn't want to disappoint you. My silence, my judgment, had pushed him away, right into the arms of a predator. The guilt is overwhelming, but the worst was yet to come. And then came the real revelation, the reason for the rush, the reason for the desperation. Sarah showed me photos of a man, tall, muscular, covered in tattoos, a menacing presence. This is Marcus Thorne, Sarah said. A loan shark, a brutal enforcer. Julian borrowed the money from him. And Ava, she knows him. Intimately, I looked at the photos. Ava and Marcus, kissing, laughing, holding hands, in a cheap motel room, in a secluded park. The images blurred in front of my eyes. The air in the office felt suffocating. I couldn't breathe. They are working together, Sarah said, her voice low, delivering the final blow. They planned this from the beginning. Ava marries the target. Marcus provides the pressure. They take the money and disappear, together. Julian wasn't just a victim. He was a pawn, a means to an end. Eva didn't love him. She never did. She was using him. She was planning to leave him, to run away with the monster who threatened his life. The depth of the betrayal was staggering. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the cold, calculated destruction of my son's soul. The manipulation, the cruelty. I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I was wrong. This was so much worse. This was evil. I felt a surge of rage, a cold, hard resolve. I had to stop them, not just to save my company, but to save my son. We need leverage, I said, my voice shaking with anger. We need to break her hold on him. We need to expose her. Marcus is the key, Sarah said. He's getting impatient. He wants his money. And Ava is running out of time. She's playing a dangerous game, trying to juggle Julian, the company, and Marcus, and she's about to drop one of the balls. If this story is keeping you hooked, drop a like. It was that realization, that cold, hard truth, that gave me the idea for the trap. I shifted from victim to fighter, from defense to offense. I felt a strange sense of calm, the clarity of battle. I was an engineer. I solved problems, and Ava was the biggest problem I had ever faced. We needed proof, irrefutable proof, of the fraud, the forgery, the extortion, the conspiracy. We needed to catch them in the act. I started working with Richard and Sarah. We devised a plan, a risky plan, a dangerous plan, but it was the only way. We had to use their greed against them. The first step was to rattle the cage, to apply pressure. I called a press conference. I stood in front of the cameras, the flashes blinding me. I announced that I was launching a formal investigation into the illegal takeover of Vance Engineering. I accused Julian and Ava of fraud, manipulation, and extortion. The news spread like wildfire. The headlines were brutal. The stock price plummeted. The board members panicked. Robert Chen called me, terrified. "Arthur, what are you doing? You're destroying the company." "I'm exposing the truth, Robert," I said coldly. "I'm burning it all down so I can rebuild it, and you should decide which side you're on." I hung up. The lines were drawn. Ava realized she was losing control. She became desperate. She started making mistakes. She tried to liquidate the offshore accounts, the ones she thought were her golden parachute. But Richard had already frozen them. She was trapped, cornered, and Marcus Thorne was closing in. Sarah had installed surveillance on Ava and Marcus. We watched them meeting in secluded parking lots, shouting, arguing. The facade was crumbling. "He gave her 48 hours to pay him back," Sarah reported. "Or he's going to hurt Julian. He's not bluffing, Arthur. He's dangerous." This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. The pressure point. I called Julian. I didn't know if he would pick up. He did. His voice was hesitant. Dad? Julian, we need to talk, I said, my voice calm, steady. I know about the deaths. I know about Marcus Thorne. I know everything. Silence. A long, agonizing silence. Then a choked sob. Dad, I'm so scared. I messed up so badly. I didn't know what to do. The fear in his voice was real. The manipulation was breaking. He was finally seeing the truth. He was finally seeing the truth. I can help you, Julian, I said. I can fix this. But you need to trust me. You need to do exactly what I say. You need to choose a side. He hesitated. What about Ava? She said. You would ruin me. Ava is using you, Julian, I said, my voice firm. She's working with Marcus. They are planning to run away together. She never loved you. I sent him the photos, the emails, the bank statements, the proof, the undeniable evidence of her betrayal. He didn't reply for a long time. I waited, my heart pounding in my chest. The fate of my family hung in the balance. Then a single message. 3 words that changed everything. I'm in. The stage was set. The players were in place. It was time for the final act. I arranged a meeting at my house. The scene of the original ambush. Julian, Ava, Jake Sullivan, their lawyer, and Richard Sterling, to negotiate a settlement, to give them what they wanted, to end the war. I prepared the bait. A cashier's check, $2 million, enough to satisfy their greed, enough to make them careless, enough to lure them into the trap. Sarah had one last task, the most dangerous one, to ensure Marcus Thorne knew about the meeting, about the money, about Ava's plan to cut him out. She made an anonymous call from a burner phone. Marcus, Ava is cutting you out. She's getting the money today at the Vance residence. 2 p.m. Don't let her get away with it. The trap was sprung. They arrived at 2 p.m. sharp. Ava looked radiant, triumphant. She thought she had won. Jake Sullivan looked smug, his shark-like smile firmly in place. Julian looked nervous. He kept fidgeting with his cuffs. He wouldn't look at Ava. He wouldn't look at me. We sat in the living room, the sterile, modern room Ava had created. Richard Sterling sat beside me, calm and focused, his face an impassive mask. Sullivan started the negotiation. His voice was smooth, confident. Mr. Vance, I'm glad you're finally seeing reason. This settlement will put an end to this unfortunate misunderstanding. He slid the agreement across the table. It essentially handed over the company and the house to Ava and Julian. A complete surrender. I picked up the pen. My hand was steady. I looked at the cashier's check in my hand. $2 million. The price of my freedom. I placed the check on the table. Ava's eyes widened. She couldn't hide her greed. She reached for it, her nails tapping nervously on the mahogany table. Tap, tap, tap. Just sign the agreement, Arthur, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I pulled the check back, just slightly. Before I sign this, I have a question. For Julian. I looked at my son. Julian, why did you do it? Why did you betray me? I need to understand. Julian looked up, his eyes filled with pain, regret, and shame. I was in debt, Dad. I was scared. Marcus was threatening me. Ava said she could fix it. She said you wouldn't understand. She lied, I said, my voice ringing with authority. The truth echoed in the room, shattering the illusion of control Ava had built. She didn't want to fix it. She wanted to exploit it. I turned to Ava. Her smile faltered. Her eyes narrowed. Or should I say, Clara Vance? Her face turned pale. The mask cracked. Her eyes darted towards the door. I know everything, Clara, I continued relentlessly. The fraud, the embezzlement, the identity theft. And I know about Marcus Thorne, your partner, your lover. He's lying? Ava shrieked, jumping to her feet. Her voice was high-pitched, hysterical. He's trying to sabotage the agreement. He's delusional. Sullivan stood up too, his face flushed with anger. Mr. Vance, this is highly inappropriate. This is slander. Sit down, Mr. Sullivan, Richard Sterling said coldly. You are about to witness the dismantling of your client's conspiracy. He laid the evidence on the table. The photos, the emails, the police perts, the undeniable proof of their crimes. Suddenly, the front door burst open. A crash echoed through the house. Marcus Thorne stood there, his face twisted in rage. His eyes were wild, bloodshot. "Clara, you treacherous snake," he roared. "You thought you could cut me out. You thought you could run away with my money." Ava screamed. A genuine scream of terror. Marcus stormed into the living room, his eyes blazing. He saw the check on the table. He lunged for it. "Where's my money?" he roared, grabbing Ava by the arm. "I don't have it," she screamed. "He tricked me. It's a trap." But it was too late. The room was suddenly filled with blue uniforms. Police officers rushed in from the kitchen, the study, the terrace, guns drawn, shouting orders. "Police, get on the ground." Marcus froze. He realized he was surrounded, trapped. "Detective Jenkins, Sarah's contact. Step forward." "Marcus Thorne, Clara Vance, you are under arrest for fraud, extortion, and conspiracy." Eva fought like a cornered animal. She screamed. She kicked. She clawed. But it was no use. The officers handcuffed her, the metal clicking cut sealing her fate. They dragged her out of the house. Her expensive suit was torn, her hair disheveled, her makeup smeared. The mask was gone. The monster beneath was exposed. She glared at me as they led her out. Her eyes burned with hatred. "You will regret this, old man. You will regret this. I will destroy you." I just smiled, a cold, satisfied smile. The smile of a man who had faced the storm and survived. Marcus went quietly. He knew the game was up. Jake Sullivan was arrested too. Conspiracy to commit fraud. His smug arrogance shattered. He looked stunned, bewildered. His career was over. The door closed. The sirens faded. Silence. A heavy, profound silence. Julian was sitting on the sofa, head in his hands, sobbing, broken. I looked at him, my son, the boy I loved, the man who betrayed me, the victim of his own weakness. I felt the pang of sympathy, but also a deep, profound exhaustion. The victory felt hollow. "Dad, I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice broken, choked with tears. I didn't know who she really was. I didn't know what I was doing. I sat down beside him. I didn't touch him. The distance between us was still too great. "You knew what you were doing, Julian?" I said, my voice tired. "You chose to betray me. You chose to steal from me. You chose to let her destroy our family." He flinched, the words hitting him like physical blows. "I know you were scared," I continued. "I know you were desperate, but you made a choice. And now you have to live with the consequences." The road to redemption would be long, and he would have to walk it alone. The next few months were a blur of legal battles, depositions, and court appearances. Ava and Marcus were sentenced to long prison terms. Jake Sullivan was disbarred and served time as well. The scandal rocked the business community, but I weathered the storm. I regained control of Vance Engineering. I rebuilt the company, stronger than before. Robert Chen resigned, his shame too great to bear. I let him go quietly. The house was quiet again, too quiet. I moved Maria back in. I replaced the sterile modern furniture with pieces that felt like home. I restored the memories Ava had tried to erase. Julian pleaded guilty fraud. He avoided prison time, thanks to Richard's intervention, but he had to pay restitution. He had to rebuild his life from scratch. He moved out of the house. He got a job, a real job. Manual labor. He started attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings. He started the slow, painful process of healing. We met for lunch every week. The conversations were strained at first. Awkward silences, unspoken regrets. But slowly, gradually, we started to rebuild the trust that had been broken. It wasn't the same. It would never be the same. The scars ran too deep, but it was a start. I am an engineer. I build things, structures meant to withstand pressure. Foundations meant to last. My family was broken, but not destroyed. We were rebuilding, brick by brick. I realized that legacy isn't about money or buildings or empires. It's about the values we pass on, the resilience we show in the face of adversity, the strength we find in the darkest moments. I looked out at the Boston skyline. The skyscrapers I had built stood tall, proud, resilient. I was Arthur Vance, and I was still standing. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comment. Your time matters.